René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy is one of the foundational works of modern philosophy. Published in the 17th century, it tries to answer a question that still feels urgent today: how can we know what is truly real? Descartes is not satisfied with inherited beliefs, social assumptions, or knowledge accepted simply because authority says so. He wants to find a foundation for truth that cannot be shaken. The book is written as a series of meditations, almost like a philosophical journey inward. At the center of the book is one of the most famous ideas in philosophy: I think, therefore I am. Here are 5 lessons from Meditations on First Philosophy. Lesson 1: Doubt can be a tool for clarity, not just a sign of confusion. Descartes begins by deciding to doubt everything that can possibly be doubted. This might sound extreme, but his goal is not to become permanently skeptical or cynical. He wants to test his beliefs to see which ones can survive serious examination. Many of our beliefs come from habit, upbringing, culture, emotion, and trust in appearances. We often assume we know something simply because we have repeated it for years or because it feels obvious. Descartes asks us to pause and recognize how fragile some of our certainties may be. The senses can deceive us, dreams can feel real, and social consensus can make false ideas seem unquestionable. By doubting carefully, Descartes is trying to separate what is truly reliable from what is merely familiar. Doubt becomes destructive when it leads to paralysis, but it becomes useful when it helps us think more honestly. Descartes teaches that sometimes we need to unsettle our assumptions before we can build a more grounded understanding of reality. Lesson 2: The self is discovered through thinking. The most famous moment in Descartes' meditation comes when he realizes that even if everything else is uncertain, one thing cannot be doubted: he is thinking. Even if an evil deceiver were manipulating his perceptions, even if the external world were an illusion, the very act of doubt proves that there is someone doing the doubting. This leads to the idea often summarized as I think, therefore I am, though in the Meditations, the formulation is closer to I am, I exist whenever I am thinking. Descartes does not begin with the body, social identity, achievements, emotions, or reputation. He begins with conscious awareness itself. The self, at its most basic level, is not first discovered through what we own, how others see us, or even what our senses report. It is discovered in the undeniable fact of thought. Lesson 3: The senses are useful, but they are not the final authority. Descartes famously questions whether the senses can be trusted. He notices that the senses sometimes deceive us: distant objects appear small, straight sticks look bent in water, dreams feel real while we are having them, and appearances can mislead us. This does not mean that Descartes believes the senses are worthless. Rather, he wants to show that sensory experience alone cannot provide an absolutely secure foundation for knowledge. The senses give us information about the world, but that information has to be interpreted by the mind. This is why Descartes places such importance on clear and distinct understanding. To know something deeply, we cannot only ask, what does it look like? We must also ask, what does reason show me when appearances are uncertain? This lesson matters in everyday life because appearances can be persuasive. A situation may look hopeless, a person may seem confident, a fear may feel like fact, or a first impression may seem complete. Descartes reminds us that what appears obvious is not always what is true. Lesson 4: The mind seeks certainty, but human life also requires judgment. Descartes' search for certainty is powerful, but it also reveals a tension. In philosophy, he wants beliefs that are absolutely secure. He wants to rebuild knowledge from the ground up, using only what can be known with clarity. But in ordinary life, we often have to act without perfect certainty. We make decisions with incomplete information, partial evidence, emotional pressure, and changing circumstances. Descartes' project teaches us to respect the desire for truth, but it also shows why judgment matters. Not every part of life can wait until all doubt disappears. The challenge is to avoid two extremes: blindly accepting what is uncertain, or refusing to act until certainty becomes impossible to question. A mature mind learns to distinguish between the search for foundational truth and the practical wisdom needed to live. Lesson 5: Truth requires inner discipline. The Meditations is not only an argument, it is a disciplined mental exercise. Descartes repeatedly pulls himself away from habit, sensory distraction, inherited belief, and intellectual laziness. He knows that the mind tends to fall back into familiar patterns. Even after we recognize that something is uncertain, we may still feel drawn to believe it because it is comfortable or familiar. This makes Descartes' project deeply psychological. He is not simply presenting conclusions, he is modeling what it means to train the mind toward truth. To think well, we need patience, attention, courage, and the willingness to sit with uncertainty. Truth is not only discovered through intelligence. It is discovered through disciplined inquiry. This may be the most practical lesson in the book. In a world full of noise, speed, opinion, and distraction, truth requires more than access to information. It requires the character to slow down, examine, question, and refuse to confuse confidence with knowledge. Meditations on First Philosophy teaches that truth is not something we should inherit passively. Descartes asks us to examine the foundations of what we believe, to question appearances, and to look for what remains steady when doubt is taken seriously. His method may be extreme, and many philosophers after him challenged parts of his argument. But the deeper value of the book is not only in its conclusions. It is in the seriousness of the search. Descartes shows us that the mind can be misled by habit, senses, authority, and assumption. But he also shows that the mind has the power to step back, question itself, and seek clarity. The journey from doubt to truth is not easy, but it is one of the central tasks of a thoughtful life. The final lesson is simple: before you can know the world clearly, you must learn to examine the mind that is trying to know it.
Hello. I am known as the narrator. Thank you for being here. I hope you take these lessons to heart and that you find them useful. Please join us for more wisdom from classic books and other interesting lessons.